Hello, hello. Pam, I've been speaking very positively about you for the last half hour.
You have?
Yes, he has.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
I don't oftentimes get enough of a platform to express my gratitude to you, Pam. Pam has been my right hand lady for 7.5 or so, 8 years, and I will never be able to express my gratitude for all that you've done for myself and for my family, and I'm just appreciative of it all. So thank you. All right, let's get going, y'all. Hello, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Okay, who wants to share some good news?
Got clear to close on a house that is on a buyer's house that is that took us 6 weeks to get the appraisal results.
6 weeks?
Yes, it's in the mountains, so everything up there is slower.
Is it Ella J?
No, it is Hiwassee.
Even further.
Why did it take 6 weeks? Can you share a little bit? Why was that 6 weeks? That would have ran me crazy.
Believe me, it was all crazy.
I had that same situation this summer, and it was the lack of appraisers in the area.
Exactly. There's a lack of appraisers in the area, and people are buying homes up there like crazy. And you know, you think it's crazy down here, it's crazier up there. Now, I will say, and here's the thing, the appraiser stayed in the home for 15 minutes when they went to appraise it, and wouldn't take the comps that the owner is an agent, and wouldn't take the comps that the owner agent provided. And there's some errors on her appraisal, like she says it's on a well, it's not. But it appraised for more than my buyers are buying it for, so we're happy. But we finally got it yesterday, and we're closing tomorrow.
Wow. So how did you keep the other agent at bay, or were they pretty understanding about all that?
He mainly deals in land. He's more of a developer, so he does occasional sales, and he's an older gentleman. So there was it was a little challenging at times. He was not happy because the buyers live in Marietta, and they were using a lender here, and he kept saying, it's those, Atlanta mortgage companies, and he was hoping they would know how to comp in the mountains because view adds value and that sort of thing up there.
Yeah.
And he was happier when he found out the appraiser came from Ella J, but he was not happy that it was taking that long. He said, I've got other houses under contract, and we're getting the appraiser that went under contract after this house, and we're getting appraisals faster. And I'm like, look, all we can do is all we can do. We have no control. But he was nice enough to extend financing and appraisal contingency through closing, because it was going to expire on Monday. So he was nice enough to do that.
Nice.
So anyway,
that's not necessarily a given. Good job on that.
Sorry.
That happened to me in LJ this summer. They would not agree to extend the appraisal contingency. The appraisal came in on Sunday night. The closing was Monday morning, and they wouldn't agree to extend it. But my sellers were like, well, we'll just pay if there's any extra. The contract price was $30,000 less than the appraisal price. So
yeah.
Wow.
Well, you have to remember is that these mortgage companies have the companies that they use for appraisals, and a lot of times they will not change appraisal companies for the life of them. Doesn't matter if they're a good, bad, or otherwise appraiser. This is the company they've contracted with, and they will not go color outside that box, and that box is what it is.
Yep.
Well, they put this out
with this.
I guess they had several appraisal companies up in the mountain area that they put it out to, and only one responded and would accept it. And then she was, you know, this one, and I tried to pay extra. I was going to pay extra if we could get it expedited, and the lender said they would have paid it, but I had offered to, and she's like, you know, I'm too busy, I can't. And you know, I can't expedite it, and they didn't have any other options.
Wow.
So if you want a retirement income, learn to be an appraiser in the mountains.
Kathy, I think you've been trying to say something for a while. Who else is trying to talk?
Well, I was trying to talk. I lived 25 years in the mountains of North Carolina, Murphy, North Carolina, and they don't get in a hurry. They are on Bahama time, which drove me crazy because I'm from Ohio, and it's get it done, get it done, get it done, get it done. 25 years in the mountains, they have their own time clock. They're on Bahama time. They'll get it done when they get it done, and they're not rushed. It's just it's the nature of the people there.
Right.
But they probably have less strokes and heart
City Slicker comes in and starts ruffling their feathers. They don't like that.
No, they don't. And they dig in their heels. And yeah, Mary, I'm familiar with that. We have a home in Hiawassee, so we refer to it as, you know, it's the mountains. It's the mountains. I mean,
I have one. I have one today that's supposed to close, and we're still waiting on an appraisal. We're waiting on an appraisal because the appraiser couldn't find the new construction.
Oh, geez. 2 different times and can't contact anybody to verify, so they just waste their time.
Wow.
Yeah, we gotta. That's why we have to have a lot of stuff going on, right? Is because the deals that we expect to close when we expect to close them, they don't always happen. There's some delay, something pops up, something gets delayed, something dies. That's why we have to be juggling a lot of stuff in order to confirm that we're going to get paid and we can make our make our expenses, right? Yes, Jenny, what's up?
So if I represented the seller
right
on the deal where it came in $30,000 under, I guess I wouldn't know. I would just be told it met appraisal. Is that right?
You mean 30,000 above?
No, 30,000 under.
If the sales price was $30,000 below the appraisal value, so the buyer receives their appraisal back, and let's say the home was under contract for 300 and 330 was the appraisal, then a smart buyer's agent would just call the listing agent and just say, we're good on appraisal.
Yeah.
Right. And then the listing agent might say to you, what was the appraisal number? Say, I'm not allowed to share that.
And so my question is this: what if, I guess it doesn't matter because it appraised. If something's wrong on the appraisal, if you were the buyer and it appraised over, you could ask for another appraisal.
No, you wouldn't want to.
Okay, let's try to summarize.
That's right.
Buyer comes in, buyer has the sales, or buyer and seller have come to terms at 300,000, let's say. If the appraisal comes in anything at 300 or more, then the buyer's agent basically they'll get that news from the appraiser, or I'm sorry, from the lender. Okay. And what's happened here is we know that there's no issue with the appraisal. So
I see.
You're under no obligation at all to even really update the listing agent technically. But the right thing to do is to let the listing agent know that, hey, we're good on the appraisal, no need to worry. That's one less contingency we have to have a potential issue on, right? You're definitely not obligated to share the appraisal, and you're definitely not even obligated to share the number, right?
Okay, I guess the question I'm asking is, what if it came in below? So if it came in below,
I'll get to that. Give me 1 second. So basically, what happens is you would tell the listing agent, we're good. Listing agent may or may not ask the question, what was it? To which you would say, I'm not able to share that. I don't have permission to share that. Okay. Because there's no positive that's going to come out of that, right?
Right.
If I go to the listing agent and I say, yeah, it was 330. Thanks for allowing us to buy it for 300. They're going to go tell the seller, and then everything is going to go downhill from there.
That's right. Yeah.
Not that they can leave the deal or anything, but if you haven't wrapped up negotiations, they're probably not going to fix any wood rot if they know they sold the home for less than $30,000 less than the appraisal.
And they're going to be mad at their agent.
Yeah, there's no positive that's going to come from that. Now, remember, if the home appraises low, let's say contract price is 300, appraisal comes in, let's just say at 290, okay? Then the seller, remember, is not going to know until the buyer lets them know, right? So the buyer would then share the appraisal with the seller or with the listing agent with a document called the amendment to reduce the price. And the amendment would be to reduce the price to 290, right? Which is the sales price, or I'm sorry, which is the appraisal price.
Yes.
And the seller basically has a couple of choices. They can immediately say no, right? And as long as this happens within the appraisal contingency time, then the buyer can then leave the deal without penalty, okay? They could also agree to lower the price. If they agree to lower the price to 290, then all parties are obligated to continue to move forward. Okay, so now the buyer would buy for 290 and they would be required to move forward. They could also do something in between. Let's say they said, well, we'll lower it to 295. Technically, that is saying no, which means the buyer can leave without penalty. Okay, but it's up for negotiation. But the buyer is not obligated to participate in that negotiation, right? They could just say, I'm done here. They also could, for example, let's say they request the price goes to 290 and the seller says no. We have to understand that if the seller does that, they are potentially jeopardizing the sale, right? They are leaving the door open for the buyer to leave without penalty. The buyer could choose to do that, or they could, and we're starting to see this even more now with a really super tight market, is they could come to the table with a difference, meaning their lender, let's just say, was willing to do 90% loan, 10% down payment for 300. Now the lender is basically told that the place is only worth 290. So they'll bring 90% of the 290. The buyer will bring 10% or 10% of the 290. And then the buyer will be responsible for 100% of the difference between 290 and 300. And they will allow that deal to go through, but the buyer would have to bring the difference in closing. Now you would say, well, why would the buyer want to do that? Here's a couple of options. Number one is they really like the house. And basically they told the world that they believed, after interpreting the marketplace and studying the data and all that, that 300 was a fair price. So just because some Joe Schmo says that their opinion of value is 290 doesn't necessarily mean that the buyer and the seller are crazy. It just means they had a difference of opinion of value. Okay, so if the buyer, let's say it was a pretty unique property, or it was in a specific spot, or it had something really special, and they didn't really care if somebody else thought it was $10,000 less, then they could move forward with the purchase price, but they'd have to bring that cash to the table because the lender doesn't want to take on that added risk.
Can the listing agent ask for the appraisal if it appraises low to look at it?
You actually have to share it. Okay, if you're going to request the price be reduced as a function of the appraisal, you have to share the appraisal.
Could you challenge it?
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Hang on, let me get to that. So just to make sure everyone was clear on that, if you have a low appraisal and if your buyer is asking for a reduction in the price as a function of that low appraisal, you have to share the appraisal. You can't just say, hey, appraisal came in low, lower it to 290, and they're like, let me see the appraisal. And you're like, nope, not going to show you. You have to share it. Okay, because at that point it's strategic, right? You're like, hey, dude, I'm 290. I mean, look, we can't buy this home. Like, we need you to lower the price. Like, we like the home, but 290, that's what they say it's worth, right? And then you make your best effort to get it to 290. Okay, now can you appeal the appraisal? Yes, however, it's oftentimes not very successful. Even if it makes complete rational sense, even if there was an incredibly obvious mistake made, okay, because appraisers are big time under the gun for accuracy, right? So if, for example, they botch an appraisal and that deal ending up in foreclosure, then that appraiser could come back and get in trouble, right? So appraisers are really, really, they try to be very careful, but they're on the hook for, if they have to explain why they made a change, that's not a very good mark for a sign of an appraiser. So you don't generally see a lot of movement in the appeal. And for example, you really just have to take the stance of your client's wishes, right? The question is, are you trying to let's say they really wanted to buy the home, they were willing to pay 300, but they couldn't come up with the cash to get to 300, right? So now we have a big problem in the transaction. So you have to ask your client, like, hey, are we trying to figure out how to make this work? Or are we trying to figure out a way to not make this work, right? So you see where I'm going? You really have to really gauge the pulse of your client to determine how you want to behave on their behalf. Make sense?
Yes.
Meanwhile, you don't want to give away your hand, right? Hey, we got a low appraisal. We're putting, we're trying to get some things together. I don't know what's going to happen.
It just seems like we're seeing a lot of lower appraisals.
Hold on. The listing agent goes back to their client and say, hey, we got a low appraisal. Go find some cash somewhere. And meanwhile, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's a negotiation.
And on the listing side, I'm begging you guys, help your clients pay for, pre-appraisals, because to try to dispute those after the fact, I've done it 3 times myself. I'm sure Kathy Ray, some of the other agents on here have tried to do it, and it just doesn't work. I mean, you hear 1 in 2,000 that they come back and make an adjustment, and it has to be an outright mistake, just totally botched. The house next door sold for $20,000 more, and they didn't catch it.
Right, and more than likely that guy's gonna not keep his job.
So, but if you do a pre-appraisal, it's $450 with DS Murphy, and they are 2 weeks behind. I'm arguing with a client right now to get that. I've been begging him for months to get it. And, when they come in and appraise, I had an investor 2 months ago that I sold a property for. I told him, begged him to get it. He wouldn't do it, even offered to pay for it at closing. But he wouldn't spend the money, and it came in $30,000 low. There's nothing I could do. I begged them to change it. I mean, literally 1/10 of a mile were 3 bedrooms, but they were in a different zip code, they said. So those don't count. But
see a lot of that, like if somebody, that's the benefit of working with local appraisals or local lenders as well, who use local appraisers, because if somebody comes from, let's say, Macon to do the appraisal, they may not understand the nuances between Walton High School and Hope, or whatever the other schools in that Sprayberry or whatever, the other schools in that area that have reputation, and the prices are a function of that reputation, right?
Well, and if DS Murphy appraises it beforehand, then if it comes back and there's a problem with the appraisal, then they will dispute it for you at no additional cost. If you want them to do it after the fact, it's $650. And I spoke to Scott over there, who's, I think his last name's Murphy. I think it's his company.
Yeah, it's his company.
He said rarely are they able to resolve the disputes for the same reasons that we can't resolve them.
Yep.
So if you're listing a property, talk to your clients. It's $450, and in the grand scheme of things for us, that's not a whole lot of money, but it could save us a lot of grief and money in the end.
Right. And I would particularly, if you're in let's say a townhome community and all the townhomes are basically the same, I don't know that I would go to that expense. But if you are in a single family neighborhood where, maybe there's a lot of infill housing, or, there's a lot of homes of different sizes, different age, and, when it was built, or maybe something's unusual. Maybe it's a larger lot, like significantly larger lot or significantly smaller lot. Like if it's a hard home to price, because there's not a lot of similar homes nearby, I would push towards that recommendation. If every home is basically the same, they just have different paint colors and countertop colors, I don't think that's probably necessary. Would you agree, Jan?
Hey, can I ask a question about pre-appraisals?
Sure.
Do you share those with your buyers?
Not immediately. I would only keep that I would keep that to myself unless it became something that was became strategic for me to share it.
And I want to point out that Jan mentioned reimbursing them at closing. If you choose to pay for it for your clients, do it that way, where you reimburse them at closing. Don't pay for it up front.
Yeah, exactly.
because they will take that appraisal if it doesn't sell for whatever reason. They'll take that appraisal that you paid for and move on down the road with another agent. And now you're at $450.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. Well, we talked about appraisals this morning. Who else has some anything else that's burning desire? And we can cover a couple of minutes about the $100,000 plan.
Last week I had an appraisal, and they did a Zillow appraisal. They said,
what's that?
They said it was a drive. It was not even a drive-by. It was the bank. The lender said that the lender looked at comps and feels comfortable that the Zillow price was right.
Well, what they probably did is they got a BPO. They have an agent like myself. I do BPOs for a couple of different hard money lenders here in town. And there are companies that do them for, regular lenders, not just hard money lenders. But they're called desktop appraisals. And they look
broker price opinion.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. They just said it was Zillow, and they said that the buyer agreed to pay the difference if it I can't remember what it was. It was like the Zillow, they said the Zillow price was that what they looked at.
Meaning they waived it. They're like, okay, we're good. We don't need to do an appraisal.
Yep.
But what they probably did is they pulled up Zillow and looked at all the homes within a half a mile or a mile to see how much they have sold for, and they looked at the pictures and the conditions. And the price that your buyer was buying it at was so much lower that they were comfortable selling it at that price, or funding it at that price.
Okay, that brings up a good point, which we actually haven't flushed out, which is why do we even do an appraisal in the first place? Okay, an appraisal is paid for by the borrower, by the buyer, but it's not for the benefit of the buyer. It's for the benefit of the lender. Okay, so let's say that I'm buying a home and I'm bringing 10% down payment. The lender is bringing the other 90%. Think about all of the research and all of the due diligence and all of the school district data, studying, and all the, checking for the local sex offenders and all the other stuff that the buyer is going to do to determine if they want to move forward with this. Guys, the bank is taking 9 times the risk. So don't you think it's reasonable that the bank would want to do some research as well, right? So this is for them. This is not for the buyer. The buyer's already done their research. The buyer's done their research with their agent and determined that they think 300,000 is a reasonable price. Okay, this is not for the buyer. The appraisal is for the lender. Okay, so if the lender looks at their data and says, this looks good to me, and they waive the appraisal, which we are starting to see some more often, it's no big deal. The buyer shouldn't say to themselves, well, I didn't even get an appraisal. Like, how do I know if I spent the right amount of money? Look, you already did your research. You're under contract, my friend. Just because some random dude thinks on some random day that this price is okay, it's not for you. It's for the lender. Does that make sense?
I have a question. How much did they charge for that Zillow appraisal?
Yeah, that's a good
question. It's funny you should. Okay, I was the listing agent, but here's the funny thing: the homes in the neighborhood that were comparable to that one, or whatever, that were in the older part of the neighborhood, were much more expensive. However, this home sat on the line right where a bunch of brand new homes that were much lower priced were. So I was worried that they would compare my house, which was newer in the old section, to all the new homes, which were much lower priced. And so if they would have really done their homework, they would have found that.
Well, the thing is the market, a free market allows a ready, able, and willing seller to meet with a ready, willing, and able buyer and negotiate the fair market value for that property at that time. So I've said this a few times in here. I'll say it one more time. Let's say, for example, that I have a $300,000 house and I'm going to sell it to Michael. Okay. Now, all the data supports that $300,000 is a reasonable price. Okay. Now, if I sell it to him for 300, what I'm telling him and the world is I believe that the property is worth less than 300 because I'd rather have the money than the property. So I value the money more than I value the property. What he's saying is the exact opposite. He's saying that he believes the home is worth more than 300 because he'd rather have the home than the money. Does that make sense? So just the
Yes.
fact that there is a transaction that transpires at all is indication that there is no fair market value. Okay, it's a range. Okay, so if somebody came along and paid 290 for the place, somebody would say, ah, reasonable. Somebody came along and paid 310 for the place, they'd say, ah, he must have liked it, right? The appraisal is really supposed to make sure that nobody pays 450 for it. Y'all follow that?
Yes.
And guys, another reason for getting a pre-appraisal on a property is that there are so few comps right now. You know, I'm having to wing it for these broker price opinions, and I'm being very, very clear with the lender how I feel based on the market, based on the neighborhoods, and I'm putting it in writing because I want, and this is a conservative lender, so I'm really not too concerned for them. But, you know, we don't know what's coming down the pike. So I want them to know exactly what they're getting because there are no comps. You know, I go out 2 miles and I find 3 comps sometimes. You know, and these are different properties than what we typically work on, but there's still no after repair comps, meaning full retail properties like we typically sell.
Right.
And if I can't find those, I can't attach an ARV, is what these lenders call it, after repair value to them.
Right.
So, you know, that's another reason to encourage people to get appraisers to come in and do appraisals because, you know, that's how these other appraisers are getting away with saying, oh, well, your house is not worth 150,000, it's only worth 125.
Well, here's the deal is I remember this is way back when like the banks were closing, you know, left and right 12 years ago. And I remember a buyer of mine, he had taken out money from a CD and he had put it basically under his mattress. Like people were freaking out back then. Okay. And he went and put it back into his account and it looked like a cash deposit. And he had all the, you know, he could trace the money, but the bank was issuing over, you know, $350,000 for this guy to buy the home. And he was bringing, you know, 15 grand or something like that. And he says, well, why, you know, why are they making such a big deal about this? Because they wanted him to wait another month so to not use that bank statement, use a new bank statement that didn't have that on there, right? He's like, what's the deal? Why are they making such a big deal? I said, look, I got to be honest with you, man. Your logic and their logic don't match, okay? And you ain't got the money, okay? The bank's the one with the money. So you don't get to make the rules, okay? If you want the bank's money, you got to play with the bank's rules. And I wish it was different, but if you got the money, we can go to closing. If you don't have the money, we need to go be nice to the people that do have the money. And if they want you to do a headstand during the damn closing, if you want the money, do it. If you think that's unreasonable, go talk to another lender. They're gonna have the same rules because they're trying to sell the same loan to the same people in the secondary market. Does that make sense? So you got to understand sometimes that like in Jenny's version, in Jenny's story, the lenders are kind of loose. They're like, oh, it looks good to me. And in some situations, they're not. And that's why you don't want to get your hopes up. You don't spend a paycheck before you receive it, right? There's a lot of things that got to go on in a transaction from start to finish. And that's another reason why you would look your buyer in the face and say, look, I'm going to be working every day to make sure that any problems, that first of all, we mitigate any problems before they show up. But secondly, that if they do show up, I'm going to round up every expert possible to make sure this works in your favor. Okay. Trust that I'm going to be working super hard, but also understand there's a lot of things that could go sideways. And I'm going to be working my best to make sure this happens. Does that make sense? Okay.
I tell my clients, do not fall in love with this house until we get to the closing table because anything could happen, and I don't want you to be so disappointed in the whole process that we can't find you your dream home.
Yeah,
And
I mean, here's the deal. If you don't care a bit about inspections, you don't care a bit about appraisals, you don't care a bit about um, wood rot, and you got all the cash, you can make 100% of the decisions. If you do care about that stuff and you don't have the cash, there's gonna be some other people involved. Okay. And we gotta play friendly with all of those people. Does that make sense? All right, you guys, do not forget that we have the One Thing seminar. There is links for registration. I don't think it's too late within the office newsletter. That is from 10 to 11:30 today, 10 to 11:30 today. If you are new to, well, this probably isn't really applicable to any of you guys, but I am doing an intro to PC session from 3:30 to 4:15 today. If you have any interest in coming to that, it'll be in this room. If you're participating in fall masterminds, don't forget about that. And also don't forget to register for the Thanksgiving lunch tomorrow. I will be here. We're hopefully get a chance to meet each other. I know there's a handful of you I still haven't met in person. It's kind of crazy to think about, but I will be here during the lunch tomorrow. What?
What time is the lunch?
The lunch is from 11 to 1. 11 to 1. Okay. And then Thursday and Friday from 1:30 to 3:30, we are having the 3612-3 class. Thursday and Friday. Robin's teaching on Thursday. We made one little scheduling mistake. So Robin is teaching Thursday and I am teaching Friday. Okay. 1:30 to 3:30. All right. That is a free program as well. So if you have any interest in attending that, there's information in the newsletter as well. The Google Drive is completely, I'm sorry, the YouTube page is completely updated. And I added some cool stuff to the Google Drive yesterday. Trying to remember what it was. Oh, this. This is the packet for fall masterminds that I went to yesterday and today with business plans galore. I mean, this thing is phenomenal. Okay, this entire packet is in a PDF in the Google Drive if you want to take a look at what Maps has put out for you guys. Okay. Any questions?
Hey, it's not really a question, but I just wanted to say how much I appreciate so much experience being on these calls in the morning and being able to just, I mean, for me, it's like being a fly on the wall, listening to really smart people talk about these things. And I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you saying that. That's exactly what we're trying to create here is, we have, and we're just a couple of people that could offer this support. But we feel passionate about helping others build a life by design and a great big business and allow you to have the freedom over your time and your income and all of that. And if we can share an appraisal situation or appraisal tip or negotiation tip or whatever with you, and it'll help you prevent a hiccup or a moment of stress, then that's why we show up every day. So it's great to hear that that's appreciated. So I appreciate you sharing that, Michael. Thank you. All right. I think we should end on that. You guys have a wonderful day. I'll see you at 10 o'clock. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.